Hi guys, this is Grace. In this tutorial video, I'm going to be showing you guys a basic introduction to 2D Rhino. So Rhino works in both 2D and 3D, but for this specific assignment, A2, we're going to be staying in 2D. You guys will learn how to use Rhino's 3D software in a different assignment. So Rhino's similar to like AutoCAD and other software you guys have used, but in my opinion, Rhino's a lot more user-friendly and easy to learn, easy to pick up. I'm going to be showing you guys a lot of commands. I'm going to be moving around on the interface and be typing in things, mentioning shortcuts. I'll try my best to verbally explain what I'm doing, but I recommend you guys pause the video, write down the commands I'm mentioning, write down the shortcuts, write down like where I'm clicking on the screen so you guys can remember and follow along later when you're doing it on your own. In order to successfully use Rhino, please have a mouse. Your TAs will be very upset if you do not have a mouse. It's not only very difficult to use Rhino without a mouse, but it's also difficult for us to help you guys. Okay, so when you first open Rhino, this is what you're going to see. These 4 screens, there's a tab over here, But Rhino's basically has the same setup as most software you guys have seen. So like we have a file up here. You can open new files, open old files. You can save it up here, save as. You can also insert files. Like you can insert AutoCAD lines, you can insert Illustrator lines and work with them from there. But again, we don't have to worry about that for now. We have an edit up here. There's a cut, the copy paste, and stuff like that. You can select certain objects. You can select certain curves. Like one curve is like yellow. You can select all the yellow lines and stuff like that. Select certain layers, all that stuff. But again, don't have to worry about that just for now. Visibility groups. You can see your groups, blocks, and stuff like that. We have a view tab. It'll help you like pan, help you rotate, help you zoom. You can set certain views to certain windows. So these windows you can set different things if you don't like the top view, right, and stuff like that. You can set where the C-plane is, which I'll explain in 3D right now. The viewport, this is called a viewport, by the way, that little square right here. Yeah, and then, again, I can explain all the rest later. You don't have to worry all about this now. Yeah, so since we're staying in 2D Rhino, I want you guys to stay in this top window right here. So in order to get into there, double click on the name, and it'll maximize that window screen. Okay. 2D Rhino, stay in top. So to maneuver around in Rhino, on the interface of Rhino, again, you need your mouse. Use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Okay, scroll wheel zooms in and out. In order to pan around and move like from left to right, when you're in the top view, right click and hold. And that'll help you pan around from left to right. Obviously in Rhino you can select things, right? So when you click and drag from left to right, okay, left to right, it'll show this blue box. It'll show this blue box with a solid lines around it, okay, solid lines. That will select anything inside the box, left to right, inside the box. If you click from right to left, it'll show a box with dashed lines around it, dashed lines. And that will select anything touching the box. Okay, so if I do this, it's not going to select it because it's from left to right. But if I do this way, it'll select that. I'd say like you somehow lose your workspace, right? You drew this like nice, awesome project, but you lose it and you can't find it. No need to freak out. You're going to type in things. So like Rhino works by typing in commands up here in this command line. So when you type in zoom, hit enter on your keyboard. Then type in E, hit enter again. It'll take you back to your workspace where you just were. Or let's say like you have a lot going on, like in bigger projects, there's like stuff everywhere and you have this specific thing selected, but you don't know where it is. You can't see it. If you type in ZS and hit enter, that means zoom selected. It'll go back to where you selected. And like I just showed you, Rhino works by typing in commands, right? So I can type in like line, draw a line. I can type in circle, draw a circle. I can type in rectangle, draw a rectangle, stuff like that. But addition to that, we also have like tools and buttons that will also help us maneuver things. So let's just go in order. Right here we have a select button, it helps us select things. We have a point tool here, so like I can put specific points onto lines. And let's say like I want to move this line onto this specific point. That will help me later on. Here's a polyline. So when you type in line, like I just showed you, right, line, it just draws one singular line and it ends from point to point, right? A polyline continues. So let's say like I want to draw a complicated project. So I go like line here, and you click, it'll keep going, right? Click, 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 click. And then you can end the line by like connecting the points. and I'll end the polyline. But if you don't want it to be closed, you can do like click, 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 click. Maybe I want it to end right here. Hit enter instead of like going around. Hit enter, and then it'll end the line where you just put the last point. Right here is a curve. So I can, when you first click on it, it'll draw a curve on the outsides. So these points are on the outside of the line, and that will determine where your curve is. All of these have a little like triangle like drop down menu. When you click on that, there's different options of what to do. So this curve right here draws a curve based on the points that you click. So the points are inside of the line. And there's all the other ones. So there's like a parabola you can draw. There's a curve on the outside where you can like hold the point and maneuver that. But you don't have to worry about that right now. Here's a circle. Like same thing as we type in circle. This is an ellipse. So you draw like a certain distance and it'll make an oval or an ellipse based on where you click. This is an arc tool. So I can draw like a point and then make a certain arc. Here's that rectangle tool that I just drew. This is a polygon. You know, draw a polygon tool right here. Again, I can pan down and look at different things. You can draw different polygons based on the options they have here. This is like a fillet. A fillet basically, so you see how this has a sharp corner? When I click on this, it'll say select first curve to fillet, right? So I want these two lines, so this line and this line, and it'll make that corner smooth. It'll fillet that corner. So you can also like set a certain radius. If I wanted like a deeper radius, same thing. You can set it, put it in there. Yeah, and then the rest of these commands are more like 3D Rhino, so I'll teach you guys that later. So obviously when you draw an object, you can put in dimensions, right? So if I want a line that it's 5 inches long, I can type in 5. And then it'll go like this. You can either click or hit enter, and then it'll finish the line where I want it to be. Same thing with rectangles. Like you can do like, if I want a rectangle 10, hit enter. By 8, hit enter, it'll make that rectangle. Circles, you can type in like the radius of it. I want 3. Yeah, easy like. And obviously, you know, your dimensions change based on the scale you're working at. So make sure the file that you're working in has the correct units. Okay, so in order to check this, type in units, hit enter. Alrighty, and then this page will show up and it'll show like inches. You can change it to feet. Sometimes we do things in millimeters, centimeters, so make sure you're in the right file. So in the A2, we'll be working in inches. Yeah, so your page setup is important as well. So this entire page setup right here. Down here, you'll see like little buttons and stuff like that. Always have OSnap on. So OSnap makes sure that you have these like little boxes that you can check off. If your OSnap is off, it'll show like disabled and you can't click on anything. So OSnap is very important because it makes sure like lines line up next to each other, like things close. Like for example, if I type in line and I want to draw it from the middle of this, that won't show up if I have OSnap off, right? I don't know where the middle of this line is. If I turn that off, it'll show like mid, near. It'll connect specifically to this endpoint, you know. So that's really, really important. Another important thing to have on is like ortho. Ortho makes it so that your lines are directly up and down or left to right. It is, if you have ortho off, like sometimes maybe like you'll draw a line that you think is straight, but it's like actually not straight, and like you can try your best to eyeball it, but it's usually not always straight, right? And having ortho on will ensure that everything is directly up and down, directly up and left to right, and then you can connect lines to that and make everything like perfect. Another way to use ortho is holding shift. So shift on your keyboard turns ortho on without having to go click ortho. So let's say like I'm drawing a straight line, but I don't want to eyeball it and I don't want to turn ortho on. Hold shift, right? It'll turn ortho on, and then you can click, make that line straight. Let's see. We also have gumball. Just keep Smart Track on. Okay, so Smart Track. Sorry, I'm going out of order. Smart Track helps it so that you draw things straight, basically. So let's say I draw a line from here to here, right? And I want to draw a line that ends right here, right? So I'll draw the line, and I'm gonna line it up. Don't click anything yet. Just drag your mouse, and it'll help you track it down there. You know, so it's straight. And then that lines up with that perfectly because you have these on and Smart Track helped you connect the points without having to click on anything. Okay, gumball. Gumball right here. When you click on things, gumball is that dot right there with these arrows coming out of it. And gumball just helps you move things around. So don't click on these circles. That's for 3D. That like extrudes things and changes like directions and stuff. But click on the arrows, and that'll help you like move things around. And then this blue thing will help you rotate things. Very cool. And then when you have gumball off, nothing shows up, and it's a little harder for you to like move things specifically around where you want it to be. So I recommend having gumball on. On this right side here, we have like a properties tab, a layers tab, and a rendering tab. I'll go more into depth with this tag later when you learn how to work with the laser cutting template. But like for example, when you click on this line, it'll show you what layer that line is on, what color it is, what line type it is. Like maybe it's this specific layer. When you click on this like piece of pie looking thing, that's where the layers are. And on the laser cutting template, there's specific set layers that you're supposed to set your lines to based on things, but I will get into that later. This is just super simple introduction. And the rendering tab is for like more 3D things. Okay, let's get into the fun part where I show you some like useful commands that will hopefully make your life a lot easier. So I don't know if you noticed, but when we draw lines, they're all individual, right? Line. So even though I made them all touch, like you saw the end button show up and they all click next to each other, they're still all individual curves, right? In order to make them one object, I'm gonna select all of them, okay, and type in the command join. Hit enter. That'll make it so all 4 lines turn into one object. And you'll see it up here, it says one closed curve. That is really important later for when you set up your laser cutting file, right? Everything has to be a closed curve in order to laser cut correctly, not open curves. And I'll show you what an open curve is in a bit. But if you want to say, let's say like I want to maneuver one of these lines specifically, and right now they're all joined. In order to separate them, you type in explode, right? And that'll make it so that all the lines are separate segments again. Let's say like this line doesn't touch completely. Like I like didn't notice it, I was far away, and like these aren't touching. If I join all of them, it'll say open curve. So this is an open curve because it does not touch, and this is also just a random line, open curve. So it's really important that everything touches and everything is closed. Let's see. Another command that's really important is duplicating things, right? So you guys all know Control-C, Control-V, and that still does work in Rhino, but I do not recommend using it. Okay, I repeat, I do not recommend using Control-C, Control-V. So I'll show you what happens when you Control-C, Control-V. So if you look up here, you can see what I'm doing. So Control-C, copy to clipboard, Control-V, paste. So it doesn't really look like much happened, but actually it just copied and pasted the line that I drew directly on top of the line, right? So that gets really confusing later when I'm like drawing multiple lines and trying to join them and stuff like that. If I have duplicating lines on top of each other and I join them, it will be an open curve. So let me show you an example. If I do polyline, right? Oh. Okay, and if I join this, remember there's a duplicating line right here, join, open curve, because they're confused about what's going on here. But yeah, that's really a bad thing. So what I can show you is, let's delete that duplicating line, is when you hold Alt on your keyboard, that will duplicate the line that you drew. So holding Alt, right, and then using that gumball, holding the arrow, so you'll see that little plus sign by my mouse. If you move it a different direction, it'll duplicate that line, that exact line that you just drew in a different place. And they're not overlapping and stuff like that. So that's really useful later when you draw something like really complicated, like this specific line and this like that. And you just want to duplicate it without putting it on top of each other and like figuring out where to find it later. So holding Alt. Another really useful one is the command trim. So when you're drawing like a lot of things, like maybe I cut like this to this, but like I accidentally keep going, something like that. The command trim, if I click on this line, like this is the line that I want to cut that, right? So I click on this, type in trim, hit enter, and then it says select object that I want to trim. So I want to trim this off and like make that line straight, right? And then hit enter again. That'll make it so this line ends right where I want it to end. Yeah, that's useful later when you like have big projects and you want to clean up the lines that you're drawing really fast. Another obvious but very important command is move. When I type in move, I select the object I want to move. So let's say I want to move this line. Select object I want to move, press enter, right? And then when you move, you can move from a specific point. So let's say like I want to move it directly from the middle of that line to here, you know? And that's really useful later when you like make your joints and like this line is supposed to connect to this line, right? Moving this point specifically to, let's say the midpoint. Remember that only shows up when you have these clicked. You can also move it, so when you, instead of doing a specific point, this is point to move from, if you hit enter, it'll go directly to the middle of what you drew. So you'll see it better with the rectangle. So instead of moving it from like the corner or like from the middle or something like that, if I hit enter, it'll move it from directly the middle of the object. You can also move it to like coordinates. So let's say I want to move this square from this corner and I want it to line up to the middle of my screen. Okay, so type in 0.0, enter. So then it just moved down right to the middle. So these green and yellow lines, that's 0, 0. Another useful command is scale, making things bigger or smaller, right? So when you type in scale, I selected my object, type in scale, there's a base point. So let's say like I wanted to do it in the middle. I just turn on center. I want it in the middle of my circle. And then you can type in a number. Let's say I want it double the size. Let's type in 2. And it'll make it double the size. You can also make it smaller, obviously, scale. Base point again, I want it in the middle. Let's do it like 0.3. It makes it super small, right? You can also do it with just your mouse. So like base point, I want it in the middle again. Maybe I want to scale it to there, you know. Freehand. Let's see. Another useful command is offset. So let's use the square as an example. Offset duplicates the line that you just drew, on either like the outside or inside of the line. So let's say like this is the exact dimensions of the square that I need, but I need it like 1/8 of an inch smaller on the inside. So you don't have to draw the entire square again. You can just offset, and it'll tell you to choose a side to offset. So this is on the inside of the square, this is the outside of the square. So I can do that, right? Or maybe I do want it on the inside, offset, inside of the square. And there's 3 separate lines, so you don't have to maneuver anything. Yeah, so we also have, you can also just do like, instead of a square, you can just do a single line. Offset. Another command that you might need is mirror. So mirror makes things really easy to duplicate. So let's say that I drew a really complicated object, but it's symmetrical, right? So instead of having to draw all of it again on a different side, let's say this box, I want it on this side of that, right? So when you type in mirror, it tells you to make a mirror plane. So if I want this box to be reflected on this side, I would draw this line straight down. So you see how this is difficult when you don't have ortho on and everything's like not straight. It's like, what if I accidentally make that like crooked? And then it messes up all my measurements and calculations, right? Again, so now you can either turn on ortho and it'll make things straight. You can either go left or right. Or, like I said, when you hold shift, it turns on ortho for you. Click. Mirror. That's really useful. Another thing is rotate. So when you can, again, when you use gumball, you can obviously rotate an object like this, but you can also use the command rotate. So let's say like, I want to rotate this line. It tells you to pick the center of rotation. So let's say like this point. And let's rotate it around this line. So pick another angle, and then we'll rotate around that. You see that? Yeah. And then you can also type in things. Like you have a specific angle. I want it to rotate 30 degrees. You can type that in. So let's do that again. Rotate, center here. I want it to rotate 30 degrees that way. You can also do -30 type of thing. Another useful one is array curve. So let's say that I have this circle, right? And I drew, let's just say I have this design. And I have it around the circle. So I can draw a circle and then select these. And then when I type in array curve, array CRV up there, hit enter, it'll tell me to select a path to array it around. So when I click on this, it'll move it around. So I can do like multiple items. Let's say I want 4 of them, right? it'll ray 4 of them around that circle. Like a little lightning bolt, you know. Yeah, another useful command is distance. That'll tell you like the measurement of a specific line. So when I type in distance on the command bar, hit enter, it'll tell me like, click the points what I do. So if I want from this line, at this point to this point, and it'll tell me that that's 47.97 inches. You know, maybe like it was supposed to be 50 inches, but I actually like typed it in wrong, or it's like something went wrong. That's really useful to know later. Another one is shift click. Shift click is really important. Let's say that, so shift click can do a lot of things. Like I showed you, it also turns on ortho, like when I draw straight lines, right? Shift turns on ortho, but it can also select multiple things at once. So holding shift, like when I select this and then I select this, it deselects this one, right? So holding shift, I can select all of them at once and then move it. Again, if I just click it, it'll deselect the one I just clicked. Holding shift, it'll let me select multiple things. And then I can delete multiple things, or I can move multiple things. That's control shift. Sorry, shift click. That's shift click. Control shift is my favorite command. It's like basically a super command. It can click specific segments of an object or a line, even if it is joined. So let's say like this rectangle here, right? Control shift can like, so everything is joined here. Maybe I just want to delete this specific line, but I don't want to have explode and then rejoin everything. If I control and shift at the same time and then click on this line, I can do many things. Like I can delete that line and these 3 lines will still be joined, see? Or I can do, let's say like Control Z also works, remember, by the way. I can do like Control Shift just that specific line, and then I can duplicate it. So I can hold Alt, and that plus sign shows up again. And I duplicated that line that I just drew. So that'll be helpful for later when like, we do joints and like maybe you have a specific joint here and that specific joint is also on another piece and you just want the joint, not the rest. You can duplicate just that specific thing. You can also like group things, ungroup things. Maybe like I don't want to accidentally move this to the side, right? But I want it to stay right where it is. You can group, type in group. And then I'll make it so these 2 lines are one piece. Reminder, when things are grouped, doesn't mean they're joined. So that you can still have like all these separate lines. Like these are 2 separate lines. And you can group them and it'll look like they're joined. But then when you click on it, it'll say 2 curves instead of 1 curve, you know. So in order to ungroup things, you just type in ungroup, simple. And it becomes 2 again. And the last command that's like pretty easy. It's not really a command, more of a hack of like, let's say I have to draw a bunch of lines, right? I have to draw a line here, and then I have to type, instead of typing in line over and over again, if you hit space or enter, it'll redo the command that you just did. So right here, I have nothing in. If I hit space, I just drew a line, space again, more lines. Yeah, instead of having to retype a bunch of things. Space and enter just repeats the last command you did. But yeah, that is the basic introduction of 2D Rhino.